Somebody running 5 or 10 acres, a smallholder basically, will be fine. The giant agri-businesses, they'll be fine as well. It's the people in the middle that simply won't be fine. I think somebody in the Treasury got their sums wrong when they were advising the Chancellor Rachel Reeves. You see, the Labour government say it's not a problem. 75% of farms just won't be affected.
$500 million of your hard-earned money sent overseas to foreign farmers. It's not a mistake. It's Labour's latest scheme. Keir Starmer, once hailed as the champion of British workers, has just dropped a bombshell on our agricultural industry. In this video, we expose the shocking details of Starmer's plan that threatens to devastate local farms. Watch as Nigel Farage, armed with insider information, reveals how this decision could be the final nail in the coffin for British agriculture. Don't miss the moment when a room full of farmers confront Starmer. Their reactions will leave you speechless. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great. Thank you so much. Now, back to the video.
Charles, how does this make you feel? You were protesting this week about the screws being placed on the thumbs of British farmers, and now we find out more money is going abroad. Absolutely blew me away, these figures today. I'm not going to lie to you, Charles. We know that the inheritance tax rate will raise around about 520 million. It's being sent to farmers overseas, including 16 million quid to help them grow tea in Rwanda.
Nigel Farage, never one to shy away from controversy, has thrown himself headlong into uncovering the truth behind Labour's latest agricultural policy. His investigation into Starmer's 500 million foreign farmer scheme has sent shockwaves through the British farming community. As Farage dug deeper, he found himself in a maze of conflicting information. On one hand, Labour claims the scheme will boost food security and create new trade opportunities. They argue it's a forward-thinking approach to agriculture in a post-Brexit world. But Farage's sources paint a different picture, one of neglect for British farmers and a potential threat to food sovereignty. Agricultural economists are divided on the policy's impact. Dr. Elizabeth Harper from the University of Manchester sees potential benefits. International cooperation could lead to knowledge sharing and improved farming techniques. However, her colleague, Professor James Whitley, warns of dire consequences. This could undermine local producers and lead to a dangerous dependence on foreign food sources. So what's really driving Starmer's decision? Some speculate it's a misguided attempt to appear globally minded, while others suspect pressure from multinational agribusinesses. Farage's investigation suggests a more troubling possibility, that Labour has simply written off rural Britain as a lost cause.
Property prices over the last few years have rocketed, land prices too. In fact, in Lincolnshire, an acre of land now is about 30,000. Although, for many of them, it isn't just about money. It's about a way of life that's been going on for generations. And I would...
Sir Keir Starmer seems to be intimating that a similar kind of deal, similar kind of arrangement, might be best for Britain.
As Farage peeled back the layers of this policy, the full scope of the scheme became clear. It's not just about investing in foreign farms, it's about fundamentally reshaping British agriculture. The 500 million isn't a one-off payment, but the start of a multi-year program that could see billions more flowing out of the country. The extent of funding allocated to foreign farmers is staggering. While British farmers struggle with rising costs and uncertain futures, Starmer's plan would see substantial investments in agricultural projects across Europe, Africa, and South America. It's a slap in the face to hard-working British farmers who've been the backbone of our food supply for generations. As news of this scheme spreads, the reaction from British farmers has been swift and furious. From Scotland to Cornwall, agricultural communities are up in arms. The sense of betrayal is palpable, and it's clear that Starmer's Labour has a fight on its hands. The question now is, how will British farmers respond to this existential threat to their livelihoods? As the dust settles on Starmer's foreign farmer scheme, the real impact is felt in the fields and farms of Britain. Meet John, a third-generation farmer from Yorkshire, whose story embodies the spirit of British agriculture: resilient, proud, and now deeply betrayed. His journey from Labour supporter to fierce critic reveals the human cost of political maneuvering. John's small dairy farm in the Peak District, passed down through generations, once thrived with the promise of Labour's agricultural plans. He believed Starmer when he spoke of supporting local farmers and ensuring food security. "I thought we finally had someone who understood the challenges we face," John recalls, his weathered hands clenching as he speaks. But as news of the $500 million foreign farmer scheme broke, John's world turned upside down. The policy he once supported now threatened everything he'd worked for. "It's like a punch to the gut," he says, shaking his head. "How can they justify sending our money overseas when British farms are struggling to survive?" John's disillusionment isn't unique. Across the country, farmers face a perfect storm of challenges. Climate change brings unpredictable weather, wreaking havoc on crop yields and livestock health. Post-Brexit uncertainties loom large, with unclear policies on subsidies and trade agreements leaving many feeling vulnerable. As John grappled with these realities, his anger turned to action. He began reaching out to neighboring farms, organizing meetings, and sharing information. "We can't sit back and watch our livelihoods disappear," he says with newfound determination. "If Starmer won't listen to one farmer, maybe he'll listen to thousands." The transformation of this humble farmer into an unlikely activist marks the beginning of a grassroots uprising. John's story resonates with countless others who feel betrayed by Labour's shift in focus. The growing discontent in rural communities, once strongholds for parties prioritizing agricultural issues, signals a seismic shift in the political landscape. As John prepares to rally other farmers against the policy, the stakes couldn't be higher. The future of British agriculture hangs in the balance, and these farmers are ready to fight for it. The question now is, will their voices be heard in the corridors of power, or will they be drowned out by the promises of foreign investment? What happens when a nation's farmers decide they've had enough? Starmer's $500 million foreign farmer scheme didn't just anger John. It awakened a sleeping giant. The British agricultural community was about to show just how powerful they could be. Like wildfire, information about Starmer's controversial policy spread through farming communities. WhatsApp groups buzzed with activity, local pubs became hotbeds of discussion, and agricultural forums online exploded with debate. Farmers who had never considered themselves politically active were suddenly organizing meetings and planning protests. But as the movement gained momentum, it faced unexpected resistance. Labour Party officials attempted to downplay the significance of the foreign farmer scheme, dismissing the growing unrest as misinformation and overreaction. This only fueled the farmers' determination. Social media became a battleground. Farmers, often stereotyped as technologically backward, proved their critics wrong.
This is going to have a huge impact, not just on family farms, but on our capability to produce food and our food security in this country.
They swapped the fields for the seafront of Llandudno to try to drive their point home. And hundreds of farmers wanted him to know just how upset they are about changes to inheritance tax.
They launched coordinated Twitter campaigns, created viral TikTok videos showcasing the realities of British farming, and used Facebook to organize tractor protests that brought traffic to a standstill in rural towns. The movement drew inspiration from successful grassroots campaigns in agriculture. They looked to the French farmers who had effectively pressured their government to ban certain pesticides, and the Irish beef farmers who had secured better prices through coordinated action.
We've had the big protest this week. The government's response, I would imagine, is perhaps not something that you think goes far enough.
Quite a long week, to be honest with you. Just come in now from, it's a terrible storm, checking on the animals. It's a 7-day-a-week job. Why the heck isn't that used for sustainable, seasonal, local innovation to produce food in this country? We need food security.
As the protests grew, so did the pressure on Starmer. Labour MPs in rural constituencies found themselves caught between party loyalty and the anger of their constituents. The opposition seized on the controversy, with Nigel Farage gleefully fanning the flames of discontent. The farmers' persistence paid off. After weeks of protests and mounting media pressure, Starmer's team finally agreed to a town hall meeting. It was a significant victory, but the farmers knew it was just the beginning. They prepared their arguments, gathered their evidence, and steeled themselves for a confrontation that could determine the future of British agriculture. As news of the upcoming meeting spread, tension built across the country. Would Starmer stand his ground or cave to the pressure? The stage was set for a showdown that would reveal just how much influence these grassroots activists could wield over national policy. Politicians are often criticized for living in a bubble, disconnected from the realities of everyday life. But as Starmer entered the packed town hall, that bubble was about to burst spectacularly. The farmers he was about to face had one simple question. How could he justify spending $500 million on foreign farmers while British agriculture struggled? The atmosphere was electric as Starmer made his way to the podium. Hundreds of farmers filled the room, their faces a mix of anger, frustration, and determination. The Labour leader's usual confident demeanor seemed to falter as he faced the sea of stern faces and folded arms. As soon as the floor opened for questions, the floodgates burst. Farmers demanded direct answers about the foreign farmers' scheme, their voices rising with each evasive response. Starmer attempted to justify the policy, citing global food security and the benefits of international cooperation. But his carefully prepared statements fell flat in the face of raw emotion and lived experience. One farmer, his voice thick with emotion, stood up and asked, "How can you look us in the eye and tell us this scheme won't destroy our livelihoods?" The room erupted in applause, and Starmer visibly struggled to maintain his composure. As the meeting progressed, Starmer's tactics shifted. He began acknowledging the farmers' concerns, even admitting that perhaps the policy needed further review. But for many in the audience, it was too little, too late. A palpable sense of betrayal hung in the air. The climax came when a group of farmers, led by John from Yorkshire, presented a unified demand for policy changes. They called for a redirection of the $500 million to support British farms, invest in local infrastructure, and promote sustainable farming practices. The proposal was met with thunderous applause and chants of "British farms first." Starmer, caught between party lines and the undeniable will of the people before him, found himself at a crossroads. The pressure was immense, and the political stakes couldn't be higher. As the meeting drew to a close, it was clear that this confrontation would have far-reaching consequences for Labour's agricultural policy and Starmer's leadership. The farmers left the town hall with a mix of cautious optimism and steely resolve. They had made their voices heard, but the real test would be in the policy shifts to come. The confrontation had laid bare the power of grassroots movements and the importance of public engagement in shaping political decisions. The battle for the future of British agriculture was far from over.